This historic day, our own John Harwood sat down with Mr. Obama, who, as is frequently the case, seemed way more calm and collected than we all feel.
Tomorrow you're going to give a speech and talk about your economic stimulus package. Looks like it's going to be at the high end of your range, around $775 billion. If it's correct that, as your aides have said, the danger is doing too little rather than too much, why stop at $775 billion? Why not go to the $1.2 trillion that some economists have recommended? Is that because you think that the political figure of $1 trillion is too politically charged to get over? Is it because you think more spending would be pork rather than stimulus? Or do you think you've figured out exactly the right amount of stimulus that's needed?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to note that every economist, conservative or liberal at this point, agrees that we have to have a substantial recovery plan that helps to jumpstart the economy. That short term it's going to be expensive, but it would be much more expensive to see the economy continue in the tailspin that it's been going in. We've seen ranges from 800 to 1.3 trillion, and our attitude was that given the legislative process, if we start towards the low end of that, we'll see how it develops. We are concerned...
So it's going to get bigger?
Well, we don't know yet. We're not just going to wait until 2 years from now and then we'll start worrying about what to do about the deficit. We want to see, are there things that we can do now, under my watch, to start bending the curve towards a lower deficit. I don't think that the Democratic Party has a monopoly on good ideas. I think the Republicans have a lot to offer. And what I will do is to listen and learn from my Republican colleagues. And anytime they can make a case that this is something that would be good for the American people, just because Democrats didn't think of it and Republicans are promoting it, that's not a good reason not to do it. There are going to be some times where we've got some fights. But my general point is I'm not looking for a fight, and I am looking for as much cooperation as possible.
A lot of parallels have been offered between yourself and John F. Kennedy, who also made history, came in with a young, attractive family, had a lot of big Harvard brains around him as he began his administration. Right. But we all learned during the 1960s that the best and the brightest don't always have it figured out.
Right. You've got to watch out for those Harvard guys. They'll get you every time.
How confident are you that your plan is going to work, and how do you avoid the dangers of being too cocky?
Well, I think that the approach that we've taken is not just to talk to the usual suspects, but talk to people that traditionally don't agree with me. When we were on vacation in Hawaii, I was greatly discouraged from going body surfing. Going to get shave ice was a major ordeal. And you know,
were you told not to walk outside without your shirt on?
Well, I learned of that after the first day. But I think that
was that an embarrassment to you, or did you care? You got a lot of commentary about that.
It was silly, but you know, silliness goes with this job.
You got some flattery for that. You were saying that it looks like you're going to win the tussle to keep your BlackBerry.
I don't know that I'll win, but I'm still fighting it. But here's the point I was making, I guess, is that it's not just the flow of information. I mean, I can get somebody to print out clips for me, and I can read newspapers. And what it has to do with is having mechanisms where you are interacting with people who are outside of the White House in a meaningful way. And I've got to look for every opportunity to do that. Ways that aren't scripted, ways that aren't controlled, ways where you know, people aren't just complimenting you or standing up when you enter into a room, ways of staying grounded. And if I can manage that over the next 4 years, I think that will help me serve the American people better, because I'm going to be hearing their voices. They're not going to be muffled as a consequence of me being in the White House.
Joining us now is CNBC's chief Washington correspondent, John Harwood, also of the New York Times. John, congratulations on this interview with the president-elect. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Rachel.
You interviewed then-Senator Obama on the campaign trail a number of times, as well as this interview today. What differences do you see in him now between him as a candidate and him as president-elect?
Well, I'm a little more struck right now, Rachel, by the similarities, which is you're talking about a very confident guy. You know, I was asking him about the dangers of being too cocky, and he said he was humbled by the challenges facing him. But this is someone with a lot of self-assurance taking into that job. He seems very comfortable in his abilities, his approach to the job. He's expressing a little bit more desire for outreach to the other side than sometimes you heard in the campaign, certainly than you heard during the primary portion of the campaign. And I think he is trying very clearly to build on this opening that he's got with Republicans. You know, some strikingly optimistic or positive-sounding words from Mitch McConnell in the Senate, even John Boehner in the House of Representatives, suggesting that they may be able to do a little business, at least in this stimulus package, when Republicans don't seem to want to go against the president-elect who's at 80% in the polls.
On the issue of economic policy, so much of political strategy in dealing with economic crises is projecting confidence. Markets want to know that the government has a good plan, a deliberate plan. They know what they're doing. Does he seem in command of this, just as policy subject matter?
I think he does. And by the way, he indicated that he was attuned to market psychology. He wasn't going to try to block that out or ignore it. You know, there was talk during the campaign about whether the economic policy was about Wall Street or Main Street. He's clearly paying attention to both of them. But I think Barack Obama, in terms of having Larry Summers around him at the National Economic Council, Tim Geithner at Treasury, feels that he's got an approach right now. He talked about beginning the economic stimulus package with about $800 billion, or I think $775 billion that he's going to outline tomorrow, but expects that to grow somewhat, and I think his team is confident they've picked out the ways to get the most bang for the buck in stimulus terms in the process.
John, one of the things that got a lot of attention politically when the economic crisis was first being realized, when it was first being diagnosed, was the problem of a lack of regulation, a lack of appropriate regulation in the financial markets. That has not been a hot political topic in terms of re-regulating those markets, but Obama did talk to you about that today. What did he say about regulating those markets?
Well, it was very interesting, Rachel, because his transition office is in the former headquarters of the Securities and Exchange Commission. He said that over the next few weeks or month or two, he's going to propose a substantial rewrite of the financial regulation, doing something about this crazy quilt of agencies that do different things that have splintered up responsibility. He talked about a global component to that, said that he wants to have his framework out before he goes to London for the G20 on April 2nd. You remember, Rachel, late last year, President Bush hosted a meeting in Washington where you had some pressure from Europe. Angela Merkel, Nicolas Sarkozy of France, both saying we need some sort of global regulatory structure. Barack Obama indicated that he may be somewhat more receptive to that idea than President Bush was.
John Harwood of CNBC and the New York Times. It's really nice to have you on the show tonight. Congratulations again, John.
Hey, thanks, Rachel.